The most basic explanation of a variable is keeping things in their respective storage. For example, let's consider the jacket, books, and paper documents from the above image. You are in your room. Where do you put your jacket? That's right, in your wardrobe. Where do you put your books? Yes, on the bookshelf. And of course, your paper documents go inside table drawers. There isn't much difference between storing data in applications versus storing things in the real world. The most important thing is to keep everything in its designated location. In programming, the container that stores the data is called a variable. Now you will be wondering, how shall we define what type of data should be stored in which container, right? We use data types to define the type of data to be stored in a particular variable. To store numbers using C#, we use data types such as integer and float. To store words or sentences using C#, we use the string data type. Let's look at some examples of data. 10 is an integer number. 10.15 is a decimal number. C is a single character. Friend is a word made of 6 characters, i.e. a string. Great. You did really well. Now you know the basic types of variables and data types that help us to store data in programs. As we already know, numerical data can be stored as integers, decimals. It's simple to understand the difference between them. Integers don't have any decimal part. Some example of integer are 186,468, 37,886, 100. Some example of decimal are 10.00005, 120.25, 1000.1. In C#, we have two basic types of variables to represent numbers, integers and decimals. The big question is, where do we store them? Let's just say we have a number 5. And we want to store it somewhere in our code. For that purpose we have variables. What is a variable? It's basically a container where we store things. Just like we saw that a book goes on the bookshelf and a jacket goes in the wardrobe. The same also applies to computers. We use variables to store our data. In real life, we might put our clothes in different places. However, this can't be the case with computers. By rules of programming, we have put our clothes in our wardrobe and we have to keep our books on our bookshelf. Everything must be placed appropriately. So, for our data that we want to store, we need to choose the right type of variable. Types. We use integer type of variables to store whole numbers, keyword int. For storing the decimal type of numbers, we use decimal variables, keyword double. If we want to store a single character, we use character variables, keyword char. In the case of storing words or sentences, we use the string variables, keyword string. Now let's dive deep into the pool of variables. Hooray! We need to choose the right type of variable in order to store integers in C#. Declaring an integer type of variable in C# is pretty straightforward. We use the keyword called int for that purpose. In C#, a basic variable is declared like this. That's it. It's just as simple as that. Now let's break down our code. Int represents the type of the variable. A represents the name of the variable we declared. So let's see what we have learned so far. Note, do not be bogged down by all other jargon like using namespace, class, etc. As we progress ahead we shall pick them up one by one. We have learned how to declare an integer type of variable. Awesome. But we haven't assigned a value to our variable yet. A variable is just like an empty room. Let's put somebody in there. In C#, there are two ways that we can use to assign values to variables. On the same line when declaring it. Assigning later in the code post-declaration. Variables in C# can change their values when going through various operations. Let's see what it looks like in our code. The first example illustrates the declaration and value assigning process on the same line of code. So what we got here are three integer variables, a, b and c, containing three different values. A contains 10. B contains -50. And C contains 0, 0. The second example is assigning value for variable after it has been declared. We have two integer variables here, a and b declared without any value. At first a and b are empty. However, in the following lines, we assign values for both the variables created above. First, we assigned the value 15 to the variable a. And then, we assigned -35 to the variable b. Also, in C# we can assign a value to a variable using a different variable. At the beginning of our code we see that both a and b variables are unassigned. Next, we assign 15 to the variable a. In the next line, we simply copy this value to the variable b. So b also contains the value, 15. Also, we can invert a number from positive to negative and vice versa. This can be done by just adding a minus in front of the variable. Here, variable b will be assigned the inverted value of variable a, which is -15. Awesome. You now know how to declare variables and assign values to them. It means that now you know how data is stored with the help of variables in C#. Keep up the good work. In order to store decimals in C#, we need to choose the right type of variable. As we mentioned before, it's pretty easy to declare a variable to store decimal values. We need to use the double keyword for that purpose. In C#, we can declare a double type of variable like this. Easy job. Now let's break down our code. Double is the type of the variable. A is the name of the variable. So let's see what you have learned. Let's add a few more examples of variable declaration and value assignment. Here, we have three double variables, A, B and C, containing three different values. A contains 1.2, B contains -10.62, and C contains 0, 0. You might be wondering if you can use a double variable to store integer numbers as well. Yes, we can. Let's add a few more examples. This declaration is also correct. But wait! If we can simply use a decimal type of variable, then why did we use an integer type instead? It's all about code optimization. Integer type requires less space in memory as compared to decimal type. For now, it might seem confusing, but don't worry, we'll cover them later. When you code in future, make sure that your code is optimized. It's a great practice in programming. Let's break down our code to explain what is going on. At first, the variables A and B are declared as double, but they are empty. In the next line, the value of 20.5 is assigned to the variable A and we assign 10 to the variable B in the last line. Awesome. Now you know how to declare the double type variables and assign values for them. Keep up the good work. Awesome. You are making great progress. Before moving on, there is one more thing we need to cover. We'll learn how characters are stored in C#. Don't worry, this is very similar to storing numbers. Let's get going. In order to store characters in C#, we follow pretty much the same steps as we do with other data types. We use the char type of variables when we need to store characters. Here are the steps to declare a char type of variable. Type of variable, char. Name of variable. And of course, the nemesis of most coders, the semicolon. As we see, everything is the same except for the keyword char. Told you. Nothing you don't know already about. We use pretty much the same syntax structure when we need to declare variables. There is an important point to keep in mind when it comes to assigning value to char type of variable. When we assign a value to them, we need to enclose it with single quotes. Example, B. First, we declared a char variable and then we assigned a value to it. Our value is the letter B for this particular example. The most important thing about a char variable is that it can only contain a single character, whatever it is, let it be a letter, single digit, symbol, or even an empty space. Only one and that's all. We can't assign a word to it. But what if we need to assign a value to our variable that has more than one character? Well, in that case, we'll use a different data type called string. But no worries, okay? We'll get to that soon. Let's fortify our knowledge with a few more examples. When it comes to declaring variables, just keep in mind that we use the same syntax. The only thing that changes is the type of variable. Hey! We are almost finished with variables. You now know how to declare and assign a value to char type variables. Just don't forget about apostrophes and that char contains only one character. Are you ready to move forward? Let's go then. Great. This is your final step of learning the basics of variables. We'll learn about a special type of variable in this chapter. You guessed it right, it's the string type. As we know, char type variables can contain only one character. However, string can contain a whole word, sentence, paragraph, or even a whole book. You might be wondering then, why do we even need the char type if we can use the string type instead? The answer is optimization. We talked about it being a very significant practice in programming, remember? Char variables take up much less space in the memory as compared to string variables. Besides the memory aspect of it, there is also a crucial difference in the declaration of string variables. The syntax of declaring a string variable is not exactly the same as that of char variables. As mentioned before, we use apostrophes when we assign a value to our char type of variable. However, we use double quotes when we want to do the same with string variables. Even if it's just a single character, we still must enclose it with double quotes. All set? Ready, steady, go. As we said before, we use string type variables when our value contains more than one character. There is nothing new on syntax when declaring a string type variable. Type of variable, string. Name of variable. And of course, the semicolon. The code looks like this when we are declaring string variable. Easy. If we wish to assign a word, it will look like this. The most important thing you need to memorize is that value has to be between double quotes. Congrats! Now you know how to declare a variable of type string and assign a value to it. Remember, string-type variables can contain multiple characters, and when we wish to assign values to them we need to write those values between double quotes. We are pretty much done with the basics of storing data and variables in C#. You did a great job. Now let's continue to the next chapter.